Oh my God, Anita.
Hello, I'm Willie Bragg. Welcome to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show, where I like to discuss some politics, and we got some politics to discuss today. Right now, it just came to my attention a few hours ago that President Joe Biden is considering repealing the federal gas tax during the holidays. And while on paper, it sounds like a good idea, considering basically how tough gas prices are for the American consumers. I'm no stranger to that. I remember when I first heard this idea, when we had high gas prices that were comparable to the high gas prices we have today. Back during the George W. Bush, Dick Cheney years, we had high gas prices. And the person that was calling for a gas tax back then was Rush Limbaugh. Anything that Rush Limbaugh proposes is a bad idea. I mean, and that's what it comes down to it. If Rush Limbaugh proposes something, it's automatically a bad idea. I don't think that Joe Biden necessarily listened to Rush Limbaugh 20 years ago recall of him listening to Rush Limbaugh be like, well, I guess Rush Limbaugh was right all along. I guess he was right all along. I guess we'll go and what? Whoa. Hey, Jack, where am I? Where am I? Scranton, Pennsylvania. I shouldn't do that. That's not right. Making fun of Rush Limbaugh is correct, though. I mean, that's the base to do. I mean, you can't make fun of Rush Limbaugh enough. But anyway, Rush Limbaugh came up with the idea, and you know, it was a bad idea then, and it's a bad idea now. I mean, well, I'll put it this way. If they did repeal the gas prices tomorrow, would it be helpful to you and I at the gas pump? Well, I guess if it's going to eliminate maybe 10, 20, 30, 50 cents a gallon, depending on where you're at, what part of the country, what have you. I don't know how standard the federal gas tax is each state. I mean, if it's saving you if it's saving you a few pennies or up to 50 cents, I mean, I guess it's helpful. But if gas prices is $6 a gallon in one state, and it's going to only take it off like 65 cents, you're still paying $5.35 a gallon. And that's still too high. I mean, so yeah, it may be helpful, but it's not the solution. In fact, it's far from the solution. And I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you why that is not the solution. And honestly, why we should actually oppose repealing the gas tax and actually demanding better reforms to alleviate the gas prices. It should go and basically get rid of the gas tax. This is what happens. Our crumbling bridges and infrastructures will crumble even more, because if there's one thing that our gas tax do, it's supposed to go and pave our roads and keep our bridges in repair. And so and that's what it's supposed to do. But you see, people like Rush Limbaugh, and I don't want to make it all about Rush Limbaugh, but people like Rush Limbaugh wants to starve government of funds to do what government's supposed to do, and that is to go and help people in society. And the way he looks at it is that he cares more about the oil companies and their welfare, because he doesn't mind the corporate subsidies that they get. He doesn't mind that the U.S. government actually flip over backwards to help them out. And and the thing about it is that I mean, the oil companies and the right wing and even the automakers that may not even be so right wing, depending on who you talk to within that industry. I mean, they don't want things, common sense reforms like for example, a bullet train, like they would have in places like Germany. I mean, they don't want these things. Some kind of public transit system, which I don't have the graphics for or anything like that in the larger cities. We were kind of on our way to doing that at one time. But the auto industries wanted to make the Americans extremely dependable on the automobile. And I'm not, now, before anybody says anything on the other side, I am not trying to take away people's right to own the automobile. So don't even start that. But here's the thing about when it comes down to it, they want to blame President Biden or blame the environmentalists or blame liberals. That's what it always comes down to. Owning the libs. They want to make it a partisan culture war. And that's what it comes down to. The oil companies, just like when it comes to healthcare, the oil companies, private insurance, big pharma, these large corporate special interests that inflicts harm on the American people with the purpose of stuffing all this money in their pockets. That's what it comes down to. Now, I understand with the Russian Ukraine war coming about and everything, that there would be maybe a spike in gas prices. I can understand that to a point, but they will have to level off. And they're not leveling it off like it's supposed to. The oil companies love profiting obscenely off of this, and they're just going to keep the gas prices high. And what do the American people do? Instead of blaming corporations, they decide to go and blame government or blame whoever is in charge. And for some reason, it's always easier to blame, even though they're not progressive or liberal or even on the left, even though they sort of play that role. It's sort of easy to blame anyone other than Republicans, shall I say, when it comes to this sort of thing, even though those that occupy that center left in America, the Democratic Party, are almost Republicans in their own way as far as policy is concerned. Now, but the thing about it is that both parties are both parties are responsible for this in many ways, because honestly, both parties got their hands in the cookie jar, in the sense that the big oil companies give generously to both parties and politicians. But as I said, this Russian Ukraine war, um, as I said, that's kind of where things were starting to go wrong, and it's supposed to level off. But with the American sanctions, it ends up backfiring the way sanctions usually backfire. And that's the dirty little secret. Whenever we do sanctions, it ends up backfiring on the U.S. And for the worse, it does. There are answers, and these answers are controversial, and it shouldn't be. Saudi Arabia is an authoritarian government, but for some reason we deal with Saudi Arabia as we deal with a lot of countries that are authoritarian. But then if somebody suggests lifting the sanctions against Iran, which Saudi Arabia commits way more terrorism against the West than Iran. Iran's terrorism against the West currently, right now, is minimal compared to Saudi Arabia. Venezuela is not one bit of a threat to our national security in any way, shape, or form. It's just that the United States like to make trouble for anomaly socialist governments that get elected, and they are so fearful that another Cuba will all of a sudden appear. While at the same time, the United States and its corporations don't mind dealing with corporatists in China, as jobs actually leaves this country to go elsewhere for cheaper labor, while at the same time kicking Cuba around when Cuba is objectively less authoritarian than China is today. Yeah, it's more communist. The economy is more communist. It's more of a command economy, a more traditional command economy that existed in places like Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union. But as far as the civil liberties is concerned, you compare today's Cuba to China. Cuba is a bastion of civil liberties compared to China. So, but the United States, because they operate on greed, and I'm not here to sit there and try to start any conflict with China either. So I just want to make that clear. I'm just making a point. With regard to what we could do to alleviate the gas prices is to lift the sanctions from Venezuela and Iran right now. And we can sell and if we do, that's a gesture of goodwill. And I think we could probably get a sweet deal out of this. But you got neocons that wants to go and do regime change wars. And, and they're not just in the Republican Party. It's not just your Lindsey Grahams that's around that wants to do this. I mean, you got Democrats that want to do this too. So, I mean, it's just, so yeah, the BushCheney people, what they did to Iran, what they did to Iraq and Afghanistan was criminal in its nature. But what Obama and Hillary Clinton did to Libya, the one country that was more prosperous than any other country in Africa, with universal health care, a universal basic income, a modern economy, and they did what was done in Afghanistan and Iraq, and now slavery made a comeback in Libya. So that's the legacy that's left. But lift these sanctions on Iran and in Venezuela. In other words, do the opposite of what someone like Sean Hannity gets triggered in not wanting the U.S. to do. Because if Sean Hannity does not want the U.S. to do this, that's all the reason more why you should do this, because it'll work and the gas prices will come down. So there is that as well. Let's see, where can we go from here? But let's not forget that let's don't act like that this is absolutely nothing but new and like we never experienced this before, because we have. And in fact, I'm going to say not only did we experience this new before, we experienced it a hell of a lot worse than now. And I'm talking about the BushCheney regime, George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. And when gas prices were high, what did they tell us? Don't question the free market. Or if they tell us don't question the free market can dictate best, and it's just an adjustment, and we just rely on the free market, then we will get those gas prices down. Sometimes the free market make things worse. Look how the free market fucks up the healthcare system. It's not helped it. We have 50,000 people dying each year because they can't have access to healthcare due to medical inflation. This sounds like a failure to me compared to the rest of the Western world, where everybody has healthcare and they don't have the deaths that we have. And, and then somebody's going to sit there and talk about the individual little horror story, and as if we don't have any individual horror stories here in the United States and everything is perfect. And, the Iraq war, the Afghan war basically caused the gas prices to spike too. And in a lot of ways, just as much as now. With the $6 that some people are paying today would be equivalent to the $4 people were paying in the year 2007. So anybody who wants to make it a partisan issue, while I am no fan of Joe Biden, don't act like that the voting Republican is a panacea and the answer. No, it's far from it. In fact, I remember, I can go conspiratorial, and when I do, I think I know what I'm talking about. Gas prices were high during the George W. Bush years. And in every election cycle, 2002, the gas prices started to go a little bit lower, just prior to the election day. And then as soon as election day happened, the dumbasses started increasing the votes for Republicans. They gained in the House and Senate. And then all of a sudden, the gas prices shot right back up. And then before the 2004 election, about a month before, the high gas prices started to dip down and slip down a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And the dumbasses started voting for Bush and Cheney and increased the Republican presence in the Congress even more. And then the gas prices shot right back up as soon as Bush and Cheney got themselves reelected with a larger Republican majority. So I know how the oil companies, who mostly collaborate with Republicans, operate. Regarding that, and then they turned this into a culture war. You question the Iraq war, you question the war in Afghanistan, you're questioning the will of God, because the evangelicals felt like George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were on the side of God. If you need to watch the movie Jesus Camp to know what I'm talking about. Let me just say this. And while the Democratic Party is absolute garbage in many ways, it is absolute garbage. It brings me no pleasure to say this, because while they're horrible, it is really disconcerting that when right-wing solutions don't work, people usually ask for more right-wing solutions. And I think that the Republicans are going to commit a bloodbath electorally against the Democrats in November. And it stands to reason why it's going to happen. The Democrats did nothing. The response to COVID by both parties in the last couple of years, the supply chain problems that we've been having, and the getting back to normal, which means that the economy is basically on overheat, is the reason why we have the inflation we have. Giving people a little stimulus check in 2 years ago and then a year and a half ago did not cost the inflation. I mean, and these are the people that talk about we need to cut taxes. Which that was giving people back their taxes money, and it proves that the people who claim that they want a tax cut for everybody, these are the folks that really want to keep the poor, They want the middle class to lose everything they got and to make them poor, and to make not only make them poor, but to stay in their place. And these are the people that want the wealthy and the super wealthy to remain super wealthy, and want the poor and the middle class they want that middle class to be subjugated into poverty, want them to stay down and in their place. We're back in the Gilded Age, and they're trying to really ream it in right now. And, I lose faith in America sometimes because we just sit there and we take it. We take it. And I'm amazed how much bullshit we take, and then we end up blaming the wrong people, whether it's people of color, or we blame the LGBTQ community, or we blame immigrants, or when you hear Hollywood, or when you hear George Soros, that's just a disguised way of blaming Jewish people. So just keep that all in mind. What I have to say in that regard. Now, with regard to with the gas prices and everything, the solution basically is to tie the hands of the oil companies. I mean, they export a lot of this oil, and we're not getting any of the benefits. And then, people's like, well, open this gas line, open that gas line. We have permits. They're opening gas lines all over the country, and they just focus on the XL gas line I believe, up in the Dakotas, and acting like that is the panacea and all of that. And when there is environmental concerns and concerns for Native American rights and all of that over there, the United States still lead the world in that regard. And then we end up, what oil we buy from other countries, we end up buying from the wrong places, like Saudi Arabia, instead of buying from places that could be potentially helpful for us, where it could be cheap, and we're not exploiting those people in those other countries. Again, I think it could be done by lifting the sanctions against Venezuela and lifting the sanctions against Iran. I am not for starting any kind of conflict with Saudi Arabia, but at the same time, I'm tired of the United States buying from Saudi Arabia, and then we get basically backstabbed by that country. And that's what it comes down to. So, and here is another solution. It's been done in Norway, and we should visit this issue here. Nationalize the oil companies. I don't think these people deserve to have that to profit off the oil companies and have to actually prosper off our miseries. Nationalize the damn oil companies and have it for domestic American use to help the economy. We need to go and nationalize the oil company. I know it sounds like a crazy idea, but it isn't. It's worked well in Norway. It works well. So anyway, if you like what you heard, press like and comment. Comment if you disagree with what I have to say. Hit that notification bell. Hit that subscribe button. And create your own platform. I say that as a First Amendment absolutist, and because we are the muckrakers of our time. And I am going to conclude by saying to each and every one of you to support independent media. And as I was saying earlier, and I will say this to you all: music.